Hello everyone, I hope everyone's doing well. Um, Before we begin, I want to say that we have one more lecture and then we actually have 2 weeks before the final exam. So what I will be doing is posting the exam early um, in week 15, so you will have that week to finish it, and so then you can have the finals week to work on any other projects you have or any other classes that you have, and so that way you can focus on other things during these times. And so, like I said, I'm here to help you and support you, and so I want to make it easy on you. Today we'll be going over Australopithecines and early hominins. So we'll be describing species of Australopithecus and early Homo, and we'll be talking about characteristics used to classify different species in our human lineage, and we'll briefly talk about tool technologies, but we'll focus more on that next week when we talk about later species in the genus Homo. So this will be like Neanderthals, Homo ergaster, Heidelbergensis, and us, Homo sapiens. So real quick, there's a video here, and please watch it on your own time. So the question is always, what's the missing link? Where's the transition species? But there is no actual one missing link that we can focus on. Since evolution is gradual and occurs over time, you can't really pinpoint where one species turned into another. So that's what that video is about, and it's a pretty informative video. So really quick, we'll go into pre-Australopithecines. So these are the possible members, first members of the human lineage. And like we talked about a couple weeks ago, last week, they have mixed adaptations for bipedalism and arboreal locomotion. So these appear to be the ones that were possibly bipedal. So they were habitual bipedal. So the two species of this, and you don't have to remember these for the test, this is for your own information, is Sahelanthropus, there we go, Tecadensis. It's going to be fun saying all these today. The Tecadensis has a foramen magnum that's positioned more anterior, small cranial capacity, and is a possibly human ancestor, but maybe chimpanzees, so we're not entirely sure. So Auroran tagensis is about 6 million years ago, and they exhibit features suggesting an angle femur, but limited fossil data. But there's a limited fossil data out there. Okay, so teeth are more similar to non-human apes. Okay, so and really quick, so like the reason why we're not so sure about the human lineage too is it's constantly changing. When I first learned about early humans, I was told that Neanderthals were completely separate species. There was no interbreeding, and now we know that's not true. So it's constantly changing. And to show that, if you just type in paleoanthropology and look at the news, you can see all these different articles that are coming out. So, like Neolithic East African pastoral societies consumed milk. So this goes further into, if you remember back to Lab 8 when we talked about pastoralism and lactose tolerance, right? And then we also have Homo sapiens interbred with various Neanderthal populations, right? But most importantly, Homo erectus existed 200,000 years earlier than previously thought. So we're continuously pushing back the time scale of human ancestry. And there are constantly new findings because of genetics and because of new technologies, okay? So by time we talk about Neanderthal next week, well, maybe not since research is on hold due to coronavirus, but there will be new news soon that completely changes how we view human ancestry. Okay, so now going back. Okay, so this pre-Australopithecine species you need to know. It's Ardipithecusramidus. So It's discovered in East Africa, which most of them are, in Ethiopia. So a lot of species are currently being found in Ethiopia right now. A member of our department, Dr. Brian Vilmore, in fact, was in Ethiopia right when coronavirus started. I'm not sure if he's back or I'm not sure what's going on, but he's looking for more species in the human lineage. So it's very interesting. And he teaches classes on this too, if you interested in that sort of thing. So Ramidus had a mix of bipedal and arboreal locomotive traits. Okay, so habitual bipeds, they appear to be. So they have a grasping divergent hallux, but also shorter toes. Okay, so they're getting there. They're not quite obligate yet. So they have long arms and fingers and shorter and wide pelvis, which we think is a bipedal adaptation, right? So brain size is the same as a modern chimp, but it's significantly smaller than Australopithecines. So it's like that transition species, right? And so RD means partial skeleton because we don't have the full thing. And so here's the Ramidus here, and here's the artist rendering of it. Or here's what we have of the skeleton of Ramidus down there. Okay. So Australopithecines, so this is the most famous case, right? Lucy's an Australopithecine, and we'll go into Lucy in a second. So Australopithecines are a species of hominin that looks ape-like but has a slightly larger cranial capacity than chimpanzees. And they're also, we know, because of those laetoli footprints, right, that they are bipedal. Or they're definitely habitual bipeds with a mix of arboreal and bipedal adaptation. So these are considered the first official ancestors to humans, right? We talked about some possibilities that pre-exist this, but these are the first we could point to and say, okay, here's the first proto-humans, okay? So they weren't hunter-gatherers, but they were likely, we can see because of their body size, and they don't have as much tool technology as other species, so they were likely scavengers, okay? So we don't think that they were actually hunting. So they're definitely hominins. All fossils are found in Africa, and they date from 4 to 1 million years ago. So we have two different types, gracile and robust. And here's a breakdown. So this will be good for your study material, and I'll post more stuff in a couple weeks, or next week. So here we have the differences between Paranthropus and Robustus. And Robustus is essentially bigger, right? So gracile means more dainty, right? A little bit less robust, okay? And so robust means definitely thicker and more larger features, okay? So Robustus actually does have a sagittal crest that shows that it was probably eating really rough plants, right? So, and rough foods, so like nuts and tubers, possibly leaves, but more likely nuts and tubers, okay? So we'll get into that a little bit more. So gracile Australopithecines, right? Everyone has problems saying these things, or specimens that appear to be similar to chimpanzees in terms of body and size. Okay, so there are numerous species, including Afarensis and Africanus, which are the ones we're going to focus on. So Afarensis is a more prognathic, so a more projecting face than modern humans, but it's still flatter than chimps. Okay, and they have smallish cranial capacities, comparable to chimp size. So don't worry about cranial capacity as much. I won't have a test question telling you how many cc's this is. This is not a lecture like the lecture class where we go deep into this. So it's just briefly touching on it. So don't worry about that. They have large molars and premolars with a slight sagittal crest. So they also have a 2-1-2-3 dental pattern. So it suggests they have a more generalized diet, okay, than robust Australopithecines. Habitual bipeds, like we said. So they have long arms relative to legs, but they also have angled femurs with short, broad pelvises, but they're not as bowl-shaped as ours, okay? So they're also very sexually dimorphic, in similar size to chimps and gorillas, which possibly suggests polygynous social structure, like we talked about with primates, right? So this is why we study primates and connect it to paleoanthropology, so that we can understand our human evolution and how our behavior evolved, right? And how similar we are to primates, other primates, such as the great apes. So Lucy, a Afarensis, right, most famous one. She's a fully grown female, about 3.5 feet tall, so very small. She's found in East Africa and one of the most complete fossil hominins that we know of, okay? And so Lucy, a Afarensis, is responsible for this latitudinal footprints we talked about last week. Now, other species, Australopithecus garhi, and don't have to worry about this one as much, but what you should know is that they have longer legs than early Australopithecines, but most importantly, they're associated with Oldowan tools. So Oldowan tools are the earliest tool technology that we know of, stone tool technology. So they consist of choppers and flakes, and so choppers are sharp-edged tools for chopping. So here you can see a stone tool reduction, and we have a chopper over here, okay? And so flakes are the small bits that are removed from the rock. So here you see that there's a flake being removed from the rock there. And we'll go deeper into stone tools, and I'll show you some. So I flint knap and make stone tools, so I'll show you some next week when I do my video. I won't show you how to do it because I don't want splinters in my of shards of glass in my foot or shards of obsidian, because that's happened before. So I'll just show you what a core looks like, what flakes look like. I think I might have some I do have some choppers that I made, and so I'll show you what those would look like. Okay, I don't have a Chilean hand axe, unfortunately, but we'll go into it a little bit more next week. Okay. So Robustus, right? They're 2.5 million years ago to 1.2. So they are a bit. They're around the same time as Africanus and Afarensis. Okay, so. Well, we'll go into that a little bit more. That most of these species were actually contemporaneous, okay, which means they existed at the same time. Smaller Paranthropus. So if I use Paranthropus and Robustus Australopithecines, I'll use them interchangeably, okay. So Paranthropus has smaller incisors and canines and graciles, but have much larger molars, showing that they had a specialized diet for heavy chewing, okay. So they have thick enamel in their teeth, a large mandible, sagittal crest, and very large, or much larger, flaring zygomatic arches shown here, right? So we see that sagittal crest, and we see those giant zygomatics with those big chompers. So it means that they have cranial adaptations for a diet of hard foods like seeds, type of nuts, roots, and tubers, okay? So not leaves, but definitely harder foods. So there's more sexual dimorphism in Paranthropus than there is in the graciles. And interestingly, they look more like gorillas in their morphology. So they also have a flatter face, and the face seems to be designed as a specialized tool for eating those hard foods. So you have two different types, okay? So first off, you have Australopithecus aethiopicus. And real quick, the reason why they thought at first that the Paranthropus was a different species or different genus than Australopithecus, so that's why I'm using both Paranthropus and Australopithecus interchangeably, okay? So now it's more widely accepted that they're Australopithecus. Like I said, nobody fully agrees on things, and it's likely to change in the next year. Okay, so Ethiopicus was about 2.5 million years in East Africa, and it was the earliest robust form. They have larger cranial capacity than gracile, with small front teeth, large premolars and molars, the large sagittal crest, zygomatics, and mandible, right, for the heavy chewing diet. Boisei, the next one. And so remember, Ethiopicus and Boisei, these will be on the test. So Boisei is 2.3 million years to 1.2 million years ago. And so they have a larger cranial capacity than Ethiopicus, and they're the most robust of the genus, okay? So they have the largest features. So really quick, too, for the test, you will be required... Oh, how will I do this? You will be required to put what species... put species in order, but I don't want to know exactly the dates, just what came before. So the first species would be Afarensis, and then you'd have Homo Habilis, which we'll talk about in a second, and then Neanderthal after that, and so on. I don't want to know. I want to know the general order, not exactly when they existed. Okay. So Habilis, well, there we go. Here's Habilis. It was 2.5 to 1.8 million years ago. And so they're habitual bipeds too. Short stature with long arms and hands. A longitudinal arch with no opposable big toe, right? So it shows that they were more adapted to bipedalism than the Australopithecines. And so they have a slightly larger cranial capacity than the Australopithecines, but still smaller than us, okay? They have smaller teeth, mandibles, and zygomatic arches that shows that they have a more generalized diet, okay? So they're even more gracile than the graciles. So there appears to be sexual dimorphism or two different species. Like I said, nobody really agrees on anything, right? We saw that before when we were talking about forensics. So Rudolfensis could be the same species as Homo habilis, but a female versus a male, okay? So this is also known as the handyman. So they habilists use Oldowan tool technology, okay? So this shows that many of our early human ancestors were contemporaneous, okay? So we have a timeline, and as you can see, there is a lot of overlap, especially when you get into from Afarensis through to Boisei here, and so you can see Habilis existed at the same time, right? So they're all contemporaneous with each other, okay? Okay, so for this week, do exercises 1 through 6, and next class will be Lab 15, and then we only have one more left after that. So, hope you're doing well. Let me know if you have any questions about your labs, as usual. And stay safe out there.